Hello there and welcome. Of course, this is as always Mikhail or Michael speaking, and before the video starts I want to say thank you all who decided to support me financially, be it through Patreon, PayPal or Super Thanks. I really appreciate your help and generosity, so thank you friends and have a good day. Now today's video we will start right in between cities of Vuhledar and Konstantinivka, where as a result of successful attack, Russian forces were able to spearhead right through Ukrainian defensive lines and as a result physically cut 053 road here in this location, delivering a severe blow to the Ukrainian logistics in this area. Especially, of course, hurting supply of Vuhledar. If we zoom in, we can see that no road systems lead to Vuhledar except 00532 road, which is now cut and is unusable for the supply, and this highway here that goes through Pavlivka and is also unavailable. The only little roads Ukrainians have left are small and ineffective. Generally speaking, Russians here are advancing along this entire front line. As you can see, at some places they are pretty close to the road itself. However, the only successful assault so far had happened here, with these territories coming in under Russian control. This territorial change was obvious due to this video geolocation, in which you can see a Russian flag planted on one of the destroyed vehicles along this highway. Now, judging by the fact that the soldiers installed those flags off the camera, it probably meant that they had to do so under fire, meaning that at this point Russian positions just reached this road and were unlikely to push on until the rest of the front line moves forward and also reaches the road in several places. Because as it stands, those new Russian gains are prone to Ukrainian flank attacks and are still too vulnerable. But it is because Russians here are attacking constantly, those counterattacks are highly ineffective. In fact, here I have a video for you of Russians spotting a Ukrainian vehicle retreating along one of the roads here in this area. However, it was unsuccessful in its endeavors, was spotted and hit by the Russian FPV drone. At this point in time, Russians have full initiative on this front, which is shown not only by this recent attack, but also the increasement of action around and within the village of Konstantinivka. Not only Russians entered this village and are now actively fighting for its control, they also started attacking from village of Pobeda, like I mentioned in my last video, as well as now with this recent territorial gain, they can attack along the road in support of Russian formations trying to clear out this entire open area and eventually joining somewhere at a center of the village itself. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that this new recent Russian advance can have serious consequences for the defense of both Konstantinivka as well as Vuhledar. At this point in time, not only do I want to know your opinion on this situation, whether you think Russians had actually set their mind to finally capturing Vuhledar, or Russians will be stopped and our attention will change elsewhere. While you're at it, please consider supporting this video by any means you consider necessary. A like, comment, and of course a subscription if you haven't done so would be more than enough. And just so you know, I'm not always answering your comments, but I do read them all. Thank you in advance, and let's move on. From here, let's visit Krasnogorovka, and as you can see, most of the city is already in Russian hands. What's left now is clearing operation, which is currently conducted by the Russian forces within the city. So perhaps at the time of you watching this video, this city had already fell to the Russians. However, again, this city is big and the clearing operations would require some extra time. After the fall of Krasnogorovka, Ukrainians will lose their last big fortified town in this whole area. The rest of the towns and villages are relatively small and will not provide Ukrainian army with any sufficient defensive capabilities. As soon as Krasnogorovka falls, Russian forces will be relieved from the siege and would be either used to expand and use this recent victory to further worsen Ukrainian defensive situation, attacking and not allowing them to entrench and construct any sufficient fortification lines, or perhaps wait a little, relocate some of their forces, for example, towards Pobeda and Konstantinivka, or perhaps towards Nevelske and eventually Avdiivka front. And speaking on the subject of Avdiivka frontline, let's discuss recent Russian advances here in this area as well. Here, Russians continuously and successfully attacked from Luzovatska in the direction of Timofiivka, attacked from Progress in the direction of Ivanivka, as well as in the direction of Vesele, Sergeyevka and Zhelanное. Attacks towards Sergeyevka were conducted via railroad, while attacks towards Zhelanное were conducted from the village of Vovche. First, let's discuss the situation around the villages of Sergeyevka and Zhelana. Here, as a result of successful assault along the rail line, Russian forces captured this portion of the front line and successfully entered Zhelana from the northwest. Now the news coming from Zhelana villages are such: the fighting still continues. Russians are actively storming the village in attempt to capture it, not only from the recently captured positions along the rail line, but also attacking from the northeast, and as a result captured those territories within the last 24 hours as well, inching ever closer towards Zhelana village from this side as well. There are news of Russians storming Sergeyevka village as well, which of course makes a lot of sense, because it is also connected to the rail line, although not as the village of Zhelana. So of course Russians have an ability to attack across this open field, but it would be much safer for them to advance and fully capture the train station, and only then advance towards Sergeyevka. So in conclusion, as I speak, those two villages are actively stormed, with their imminent fall inching ever closer. This isn't the only place where Russians attacked, because as a result of successful storming operations, Russian forces fully capture village of Vesele as well as its surrounding areas. And those were the territories captured by the Russians. The full control of Vesele and its surrounding areas are very vital for the Russian offensive efforts here in this area. Not only can they use the village of Vesele as a staging point for supportive attacks in the direction of Ivanivka, but through this road they can also gain ability to storm much bigger and more important Avdiivka. So far this city haven't seen any fighting, but perhaps within just few days it will. From the village of Vesele, let's move slightly to the north and discuss the situation around the village of Ivanivka. Few days ago Russians came to a very close proximity of the village itself, and within the last 24 hours they've launched a highly successful assault towards the village, and as a result captured those territories in the process. Now that Vesele had fallen, Russians would have easier time capturing the village of Ivanivka, as they've now gained ability to attack from multiple axes at the same time. And if Russians continue to have success near Timofiivka as they are, and as it will be mentioned in the next portion of the video, they will surely overrun Ukrainians in Lysychne and Sviridanivka, and after that, the fate of Ivanivka will surely be sealed. From here we continue slightly to the north and discuss the situation around Timofiivka village. Within the last 24 hours, Russians successfully stormed this village from recently captured Luzavatskaya and nearly captured it in its full entirety, with just a small portion of the village left in Ukrainian control. And with those territorial changes, you can already see where all this is going. If we zoom in, we can see that Russian forces successfully crossed this open field and were seemingly able to entrench themselves within this small forest patch. This means that the villages of Lysychne and Sviridanivka can now be subjugated to direct Russian assaults. So the battle for those two villages are about to start. From Avdiivka frontline, let's move to Toretsk and discuss the territorial changes here as well. Here, all throughout last 24 hours, Russians attacked all across the front, fighting in the direction of Toretsk itself, as well as Pivnichne and Druzhba. They were also conducting clearing operations within Zalishne village, and as a result of all that, this portion of the city was captured by the Russians. Now, if we go to the city of New York itself, the situation here is a little bit different. All throughout last 24 hours, Russian forces continued to fight in an attempt to expand their zone of control within the city itself. They attacked towards the city center, as well as around Yuriivka, and in an attempt to clear off those areas to the west and east. However, their advance is hindered by continuous Ukrainian counterattacks. Ukrainians, understanding full well the difficulty of their situation, are doing everything in their power to stop Russians before they advance too far. Unfortunately for Ukrainians, however, it did little to stop the Russians, with this portion of the city falling into the Russian hands. Of course, like mentioned previously, Ukrainians tried to counterattack, however advanced just a very tiny little bit in the center of New York, and were successfully stopped for now. When it comes to the situation in general, we can see that with those two recent Russian advances, a pincer maneuver that is happening from New York and Zalishne becomes more obvious and obvious. Very little space is left between forward Russian positions on both sides of the front line, and the longer Ukrainians wait, the less time it would be to retreat, and the less organized this retreat will be. Again, just remember Avdiivka. As you can see, Russians have a very tough fight ahead, and I know just the tactic that will help Russians to advance, as you can see here on this video, which is taken particularly from this part of the front. Russians are using e-scooters to advance towards enemy positions. As you can see, this tactic is superior, as those Russians are advancing unchallenged. In combination with famous Russian shovels, Russian army will truly become unbeatable. But all jokes aside, this is the end of the video. Hopefully it was to your liking and was informative enough. As you can see, I am slowly recovering from my sickness, so videos will be coming out much more often. So again, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for your support, for your likes. It really helps, so thank you all. As always, humanity calls me to condemn all violence against human beings. Have a great day, and always remember, Russia will be free and great.